What was this change? Asked the boy. The vampire sighed. He leaned against the chair and looked at the walls. At first, I thought I was another doctor or someone summoned by my family to try to reason with me. But the suspicion was removed at once. He stepped close to my bed and leaned down so his face was in the lamplight, and I saw that he was no ordinary man at all. His gray eyes burned with incandescence, and his long white hands, which hung by his sides, were not those of a human being. I think I knew everything in that instant, and all that he told me was only aftermath. What I mean is, the moment I saw him, saw this extraordinary aura, and knew him to be no creature I've ever known. I was reduced to nothing. That ego which could not accept his presence of extraordinary human being in its midst was crushed. All my conceptions, even my guilt and wish to die, seemed utterly unimportant. I completely forgot myself, he said, now silently touching his breast with his fist. I forgot myself totally. In the same instant knew totally this meaning of the possibility. From then on I experienced only increasing wonder. As he talked to me and told me of what I might become, of what this life had been and stood to me, my past shrank to embers. I smiled my life as it stood apart from it, the vanity, the self-starving, the constant fleeing from one petty annoyance from another. The lip service to God and the Virgin and a host of saints whose names filled my prayer books, none of whom made their slightest difference in a narrow, materialistic, and selfish existence. I saw my real gods, the gods of most men, food, drink, insecurity, and conformity. Cinders. The boy's face was tense, of a mixture of confusion and amazement. And so you decided to become a vampire? He asked. The vampire was silent for a moment. Decided. It doesn't seem to be the right word. Yet I cannot say it was inevitable from the moment that he stepped into the room. No, indeed, it was not inevitable. Yet I cannot say I decided. Let me say that when he'd finished speaking, no other decision was possible for me, and I pursued my own course without a backward glance, except for one. Except for one? What? My last sunrise, said the vampire. That morning, I was not yet a vampire, and I saw my last sunrise. I remember it completely, yet I do not remember any other sunrise before it. I remember the light came first to the tops of the French windows, paling behind the lace curtains, among the leaves of trees, brighter and brighter. Finally, the sun came to the windows themselves, and the lace laid in the shadows on the stone floor, and all over the form of my sister, who was still sleeping, shadows of lace on the shawl over her shoulders and head. As soon as she was warm, she pushed the shawl away without awakening. Then the sun shone full in her eyes, and she tightened her eyelids. Then it was gleaming on the table where she rested her head on her arms, and gleaming, blazing in the water in the pitcher. And I could feel it on my hands, on the counterpane, and then on my face. I lay in the bed thinking about the things the vampire had told me, and that it was that I said goodbye to the sunrise and went out to become a vampire. It was the last sunrise. The vampire was looking at the window again, and when he stopped, the silence was so sudden, the boy seemed to hear it. He could hear the noises from the street. The sound of a truck was deafening. The light cord stirred from the vibration, and the truck was gone. Do you miss it? He asked in a small voice. Not really, said the vampire. There are so many other things, but where were we? You want to know how it happened, how I became a vampire? Yes, said the boy. How did you change? Exactly. I can't tell you exactly, said the vampire. I can tell you about it, and close it with words that will make the value of it to me evident to you. But I can't actually tell you exactly, any more if I could tell you exactly what is the experience of sex if you've never had it. The young man seemed struck suddenly. Still another question, but before I could speak, the vampire went on. As I told you, this vampire, Lestat, wanted the plantation, a mundane reason, surely, for granting me a life which will last until the end of the world. But he was not a very discriminating person. He did not consider the world's small population of vampires to be a select club, I should say. He had human problems, a blind father who did not know his son was a vampire, I must not find out. Living in New Orleans had become too difficult for him, considering his needs and necessity to care for his father, and he wanted to point to Luke. We went out to the plantation the next evening, and sounds the blind father in the master bedroom, and I proceeded to do the change. I cannot say it consisted of any one step really, though one, of course, was a step beyond which I could make no return. But there were several acts involved, and the first was the death of the overseer. Lestat took him in his sleep. I was to watch and to approve, that is, to witness the taking of human life as a proof of my commitment and part of my change. This proved without doubt the most difficult part for me. I have told you I have no fear regarding my own death, only a squeamishness about taking my life myself. But I had a most high regard for the life of Oris, and a horror of deaths most recently developed my own brother. I had to watch the overseer wake with a start, try to throw off Lestat with both hands, flail, then lie struggling under Lestat's grasp, and finally going limp, drained of his blood, and die. He did not die at once. We stood in his narrow bedroom for the better part of an hour watching him die. Part of my change, as I said. Lestat would have stayed otherwise. Then it was necessary to get rid of the overseer's body. I was almost sick from this, weak and feverish already. I had little reserve, and handling a dead body with such purpose caused me nausea. Lestat was laughing, telling me callously that I'd feel so different once I was a vampire, that I would laugh too. He was wrong about that. I never laughed at death, no matter how often and regularly I was the cause of it. But let me take things in order. We had to drive up to the river road until we came to open fields and leave the overseer there. We tore his coat, stole his money, and saw to it his lips were stained with liquor. I knew his wife, who lived in New Orleans, and knew the state of desperation she would suffer when the body was discovered. But more than sorrow for her, I felt pain she would never know what happened, and that her husband had not been found drunk on the road by robbers. As we beat the body, bruising the face and shoulders, I became more and more aroused. Of course you must realize this time the vampire Lestat was extraordinary. He had been no more human to me than a biblical angel. But under this pressure my enchantment of him was strained. I had been seen by becoming a vampire in two lights. The first light was simply enchantment. Lestat had overwhelmed me on my deathbed. But the other light was my wish for self-destruction, my desire to be thoroughly damned. This was the open door through which Lestat had come on both this first and second occasion. Now I was not destroying myself, but someone else. The overseer, his wife, his family. I recoiled and might have fled from Lestat, my sanity thoroughly shattered, had it not sensed the infallible instinct that was happening. Infallible instinct. The vampire mused. Let me say, the powerful instinct of a vampire to whom even the slightest change in human facial expression is apparent is as a gesture. Lestat had preternatural timing. He rushed me into the carriage and whispered the hoarse words home. I want to die, I murmured. This is unbearable. I want to die. You have it in the power to kill me. Let me die. I refused to look at him, to be spellbound by the sheer beauty of his appearance. He spoke my name to me softly, laughing, and as I said, he was determined to have the plantation. But would he have let you go, asked the boy, under any circumstances? I don't know. Knowing Lestat as I do now, I would say he would have killed me rather than let me go. But this was what I wanted, you see. It didn't matter. No, this was what I thought I wanted. As soon as we reached the house, I jumped down out of the carriage and walked a zombie to the brick stairs where my brother had fallen. The house had been unoccupied for months now. The overseer had his own cottage, and Louisa and heat and damp were already picking apart the steps. Every crevice was spreading grass and even wildflowers. I remember feeling the moss moisture which the night was cool when I sat down on the lower steps, and even rested my head against the brick, and as I felt the little wax-stemmed wildflowers with my hands. I pulled a clump of them out with the easy dirt in one hand. I wasn't to die. Kill me, I said to the vampire. Now I am guilty of murder. I can't live. He sneered of his own impatience, of people listening to obvious lies of others, and then in a flash he fastened on me just as he had on my man. I thrashed against him wildly. I dug my boot into his chest and kicked him as fiercely as could, his teeth stinging my throat, the fever pounding in my temples, and with a movement of his entire body, much too fast for me to see. He suddenly standing disdainfully on the foot of the steps. I thought you wanted to die, Louise, he said. The boy made a soft, abrupt sound when the vampire said his name, and the vampire acknowledged it with a quick statement. "Yes, that is my name," and went on. While I lay there helpless in the face of my own cowardice and fatuous again, perhaps so directly confronted with it, I might in time have gained the courage to truly take my life, not to whine big for others to take it. I saw myself turning on the knife then, languishing in a day of suffering which I found as necessary as presence from the confessional, truly hoping death would find me unaware and render me fit for eternal pardon. And also I saw myself as in a vision, standing at the head of the stairs just where my brother had stood, and hurtling my body down the bricks. But there was no time for courage, or shall I say, there was no time in Lestat's plan for anything but his. "Now listen to me, Louise," he said, as he lay down beside me on the step. His movement so graceful and so personal at once made me think of a lover. I recoiled, but he put his right arm around me and pulled me close to his chest. Never had I been so close to him before, and in the dim light I could see the magnificent radiance of his eyes and the unnatural mask of his skin. As I tried to move, he pressed his right fingers against my lips and said, "Be still." "I am going to drain you now to the very threshold of death, and I want you to be so quiet that you can almost hear the flow of blood through your veins, so quiet that you can hear the flow of the same blood through mine. It is your consciousness, your will, which you must keep you alive." I wanted to struggle, but he pressed so hard with his fingers that my entire prone body in check, and as soon as I stopped my abortive attempt at rebellion, he sank his teeth into my neck. The boy's eyes grew huge. He had drawn farther and farther back in the chair as the vampire spoke, and now his face was tense, his eyes narrowed as if he was preparing to weather a blow. "Have you ever lost a great amount of blood?" asked the vampire. "Do you know the feeling?" The boy's lips shaped in the word no, but no sound came out. He cleared his throat. "No," he said. Candles burned in the upstairs parlor where he had planned the death of the overseer. An oil lantern swayed in the breeze in the gallery, and all the light coal ascending began to shimmer, as though a golden presence hovered over me, suspended in the stairwell, softly entangled with the railings curling and contracted like smoke. "Listen, keep your eyes wide," the state whispered to me, his lips moving against my neck. I remembered the movement of his lips, raising the hairs all over my body, a sense of shock, a sensation that of my body is not unlike the pleasure of passion. He stopped, his right fingers slightly curled beneath his chin, with a first finger appearing to lightly stroke it. The result was, within 10 minutes, I was weak to paralysis. Panic-stricken, I discovered I could not even will myself to speak. Lestat still held me, of course, and his arm was like the weight of an iron bar. I felt his teeth withdraw with such a keenness that to puncture would seem enormous, lined with pain. And I'm going to go ahead and go to the next video just because I'm going to run out of time. Thank you again for staying with me this far.